After years of battling to earn my cold mother-in-law's approval and enduring the lies from my own mother, I finally hit my breaking point. I had to take a stand. It was one of those moments when everything inside me screamed to do something, anything, to change the path I was on. Hey everyone, I'm Bridget, 35, and I want to get your opinion on something that happened recently. So, here's the story. Archie, my husband, and I have been married for almost 10 years now. Our love story, though, didn't start in the usual way. It kicked off in a cozy little coffee shop, of all places. Archie, with his charming smile, mustered up the courage to ask me out, and the rest, as they say, is history. What do we do, you ask? Well, Archie is the talker of the two of us. His smooth words have always been his strength, no wonder he won me over. As for me, I'm the graphic designer, working in a world of colors and shapes, always striving to make things stand out. Our dating days were simple, but sweet. Nothing too extravagant, just laughter, late-night conversations, and movie nights on the couch. But here's the twist, our wedding wasn't the fairy tale kind. Far from it. We were more like a whirlwind couple, with everything happening so fast. Not long after we started dating, surprise! I found out I was pregnant. Cue the panic. We were both young, and neither of us had planned to get married, let alone start a family so quickly. But life has a funny way of throwing curveballs, doesn't it? There we were, facing the reality of impending parenthood and deciding what to do next. After some serious talks, we decided to take the plunge into marriage, that is. And let me tell you, planning a wedding in a flash isn't for the faint of heart. We scrambled to pull everything together, small ceremony, close family, and friends around us. And you know what? Despite the madness, it felt right. Surrounded by our loved ones, we exchanged vows, promising to stick by each other through everything. And nobody seemed to mind the whole shotgun wedding thing. Our families? They couldn't have been happier for us. Everyone hit it off instantly. It was like we'd known each other for years. We swapped stories, laughed, and enjoyed every second. But just when I thought life was going smoothly, here came the twist. After I gave birth to our daughter, things started getting icy with my mother-in-law. At first, I chalked it up to those postpartum hormones that were making everything feel more intense. But no, as time went on, her frosty demeanor didn't budge. I became invisible to her, it seemed. She wouldn't acknowledge me, barely even said hello when we were together. I tried, I really did, to start a conversation, but it was like I was talking to a wall. And that wasn't the worst of it. Her silence didn't just sting, it came with a heavy layer of disapproval. Every move I made seemed to trigger her. It was like she was constantly waiting for me to mess up. Take my cooking, for example. I would spend hours in the kitchen, perfecting a meal for the family. But she always found something wrong with it. Too salty. Too bland. Too spicy. Whatever it wasn't right. And then there were her comments on my parenting. From how I dressed the baby to how I handled bedtime, nothing I did was ever good enough. It was exhausting, to say the least. But the worst part? She couldn't help but compare me to Archie's ex-girlfriends. It was like she had a highlight reel of all his past relationships, and every time I saw her, she'd remind me how they were better at something. At first, I would smile and nod, but inside, it felt like a punch to the gut. Here I was, doing my best to be a loving wife and mother, and yet, it never seemed to be enough. And the passive-aggressive gifts? Don't even get me started. The cookbook with recipes I couldn't stand, or the parenting book that felt more like a judgment than anything helpful, it was all part of her cruel little game. It got to the point where I dreaded family gatherings. The glares, the backhanded compliments, it was like I was walking on eggshells every time. But despite it all, I refused to let her negativity break me down. I knew my worth, even if she didn't. I knew I was a good wife and mother, flaws and all. Sure, her approval would have been nice, but I didn't need it to feel validated. So, I focused on what mattered, my family, my happiness, and the love Archie and I shared. Shotgun wedding and all. Then came another twist. I found out I was pregnant with our second child. And, as if things weren't tough enough, things between Archie and me were rocky. The strain of our relationship, the coldness from my mother-in-law, it all seemed to collide at once. Archie and I? We were deep in the weeds of relationship problems. Communication? Non-existent. It was like we were speaking different languages. I'd try to express my feelings, but he would shut down, and before long, we were playing emotional charades. We'd both been hurt in past relationships, and those old wounds kept creeping up. It was hard to lower my guard, to trust again. But therapy, well, therapy was our lifeline. Slowly, we began to piece things back together. Between juggling work, chores, and everything else, we became masters at coexisting but forgot what it meant to truly connect. And then, just when we thought we might get a grip on things, we were hit with financial stress. Money, though it can't buy happiness, can certainly cause a lot of tension. We fought over budgets, future goals, and all those little things that add up. It was exhausting. But therapy? It kept us grounded. Each week, we unpacked our baggage and learned how to communicate better, rebuild trust, and tackle our financial issues together. But that wasn't all. Even as things slowly improved between Archie and me, my mother-in-law's cold attitude didn't change. Even after the birth of our second child, things stayed the same. She would speak to Archie and the kids, but when it came to me, it was like I didn't exist. You'd think having another grandchild would soften her up a bit. But nope. She stayed as icy as ever. The air was thick with tension as I tried to navigate the labyrinth of motherhood, constantly juggling the needs of two little ones. Meanwhile, Archie and I were getting the cold shoulder from her, a chilly reception that left me wondering if I'd ever escape her nitpicking gaze. She had an uncanny ability to spot every little flaw in my actions, whether it was how I dressed the kids or how I folded the laundry. It was as if nothing was ever enough. You could say I was drowning under the weight of constant criticism, and trying to manage the chaos of parenthood made it even more overwhelming. Archie and I were doing our best to ride the roller coaster of raising two young kids. The late nights, the diapers, the never-ending rounds of peekaboo, it was exhausting. But in the midst of it all, there were moments of pure magic, like when our children's laughter filled the room, and the warmth of their joy reminded us why we were doing this. But then there was her, always finding fault, even in the most mundane moments of our lives. Take the time she popped over unannounced and found me feeding my daughter store-bought snacks. You would have thought I'd committed a grave sin. Her reaction was enough to make anyone question their choices. Homemade meals were apparently the only way to go. Or the time she critiqued my choice of daycare for our eldest. According to her, I hadn't done enough research or visited enough places, even though I had spent weeks scouring the internet and touring daycare centers to find the perfect fit. And let's not forget the unsolicited advice on discipline. Every tantrum, every time out, she had an opinion on how it should be handled. It was as though she thought she knew better than me, the one who spent day in and day out with the kids. Despite her interference, Archie and I refused to let her negativity seep into our family dynamic. We leaned on each other for support, finding strength in our love and commitment to one another. The constant pressure only made us stronger. But things took a surprising turn during my mother-in-law's 65th birthday party, which had been a long-awaited event. We were all dressed up, headed to celebrate this milestone. I'd spent a lot of time thinking about the perfect gift for her, knowing it was no easy task given the strained relationship we had. But I was hopeful, maybe, just maybe, this gift could act as an olive branch to repair the rift between us. After much deliberation, I chose a beautiful pair of diamond earrings, one similar to a set she had once owned but had unfortunately lost. I thought, what better way to show her I care than by reminding her of a happier time? With the gift in hand, we arrived at the party, my heart full of optimism. The laughter, the chatter, the celebratory atmosphere, it was all just as I had hoped. I handed over my gift, my smile wide, hoping this would be the gesture that finally thawed the ice between us. For a brief moment, I thought she might actually appreciate it. But as soon as I looked into her eyes, any hope quickly evaporated. Her expression remained cold and unreadable, and I was left wondering if I'd missed the mark once again. The rest of the party continued as planned, cake, candles, laughter, but deep down, a cloud hung over me, casting a shadow on the evening. Then, just when I thought things were settling down, I overheard my mother-in-law talking to my sister-in-law. The words pierced through the air like a dagger. She was accusing me of showing off, of giving her the diamond earrings as a flashy attempt to win her favor. My heart sank. How could she twist such a sincere gesture into something so malicious? It felt like a slap in the face, a reminder that nothing I did would ever be good enough for her. Fueled by a whirlwind of emotions, I couldn't let it go. I had to confront her. As I stood there in the kitchen, my heart pounded in my chest. Was this really how she saw me? Did she really think I was trying to show off? But when I asked her, her response only made things worse. She downplayed my gift, saying giving her diamond earrings wasn't a smart move, considering our financial situation. As if that somehow made the whole thing better. I wasn't about to let her off the hook so easily. I pressed her further, asking if she truly thought I was trying to buy her affection with flashy gifts. Her reaction was a mix of confusion and surprise. "What do you mean by that?" she asked. And that's when everything came crashing down. As I tried to express how her coldness toward me had been eating away at me, hoping for some sort of understanding or apology, she hit me with something I never saw coming. She accused me of trapping her son, Archie. I was floored. Trapping him? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. How could she say that? Last time I checked, it took two people to make a relationship work, and Archie had just as much agency in our whirlwind romance as I did. But she wasn't done. She told me that my mother had spilled some truth to her, something about our shotgun wedding and how I had baby-trapped Archie into marrying me. Not once, but twice. My mind was reeling. How could anyone believe such a thing? It was like a punch to the gut. I was desperate for answers, but all she did was double down, spitting an even more twisted tale. How could my own mother be involved in spreading such hurtful lies? I refused to let her words stand unchallenged. Standing tall, I looked her dead in the eye and told her, in no uncertain terms, that she was dead wrong. I never manipulated Archie into anything. I never even brought up marriage when I found out I was pregnant the first time. It was Archie who made the decision to propose, not me. As for getting pregnant again during one of those rough patches we had, that was a cruel fabrication. Sure, Archie and I had our struggles, our ups and downs, but not once did I manipulate the situation to keep him by my side. The anger was rising in me now, a fierce determination to set the record straight. I looked at her, and I said, "If you want the truth, ask your son. He'll tell you exactly what happened." I called Archie into the kitchen, and as he walked in, I laid it all out for him. When he heard what his mother had been saying, his disbelief was palpable. He turned to her, reassuring her that I had never pressured him into marriage. That decision had always been his, and he'd made up his mind long before I even got pregnant the first time. His words were a relief, a solid reassurance that the truth was on our side. But as I saw his mother's reaction, I couldn't help but feel the satisfaction of watching her swallow a dose of humility. She realized her mistake, owned up to it, and apologized. Finally, after all these years of coldness and distance, there was an acknowledgement. But even as she apologized, I couldn't shake the knot that had formed in my stomach. Sure, it was good to hear her admit she was wrong, but the damage had already been done. Years of chilly indifference had built up because of a lie that had been spread by my own mother. I felt betrayed, deep down in my core. The woman who had given me life had been the one to sow the seeds of this hurt. It was hard to process. How could I trust someone who had caused me this much pain? Still, as I stood there, Archie's words of reassurance couldn't erase that feeling of betrayal. So, I knew what I had to do next. I couldn't move past it without confronting the source. I had to face my mother. The decision was made, I couldn't wait any longer. I sent Archie and the kids off, telling them I'd be back soon, and I hopped into a cab, determined to find answers. The tension in the cab felt suffocating. Every mile that passed, my anxiety tightened, gnawing at me like a beast in my gut. My mind raced. How could she do this to me? Why would my own mother lie about me? By the time I reached her house, the storm inside me was nearly unbearable. I didn't knock, I didn't wait. I barged right through her door, heart pounding, and confronted her. I laid out all the accusations, every word that had been whispered about me, demanding to know the truth. At first, she tried to brush me off, dismissing my concerns as if they didn't matter. But I wasn't going to back down. I pressed harder now, unwilling to let her get away with it. That's when the truth came crashing out. She admitted it. Yes, she had told Archie's mother that I trapped him into marriage. Her reasoning? According to her twisted version of the story, Archie was too good for me, and I had to manipulate the situation just to get him to settle down. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. How could she say something like that? How could she paint me as a villain in my own life? After that confrontation, it was clear she wasn't sorry. She didn't even seem to understand the depth of her betrayal. She wasn't remorseful, not in the least. It was a slap in the face. The woman who was supposed to love me, to support me unconditionally, had shown me nothing but callous disregard. In that moment, I realized I had to draw a hard line. This was it. I was done. I looked her square in the eye and told her exactly that. Done. Done with the lies, done with the deceit, done with the toxic cycle that had poisoned my life for so long. I told her she would never have the chance to hurt me or my children again. It wasn't an easy decision, but it was one I knew I had to make, for my own well-being, for my own peace of mind. Of course, she didn't take it well. She shouted, hurled insults, called me entitled, and worse. But I didn't stay to listen. I had said what I needed to say. The conversation was over. When I got back home, the floodgates opened. I collapsed into Archie's arms, feeling everything I had been holding inside for so long pour out. I cried until there were no more tears left, letting his comforting embrace wash over me. But just as I thought maybe I could start healing from the chaos, my cousin called. They didn't hold back. They told me, point blank, that I might have been too harsh. That cutting my mother off from her grandchildren might be taking it too far. And for a moment, doubt crept in. Had I been too quick to act? Was it wrong to cut her out after everything she'd done? I sat there, mulling it over, and just as I was about to come to a decision, my phone buzzed again. It was a surprise when she showed up at our doorstep. There she was, holding a bag of food, standing there looking as if the weight of the world had suddenly hit her. I wasn't sure what to expect, especially after everything that had unfolded. Yet, there she was, an apology hanging on her lips, genuine and unhurried. She didn't waste any time. She jumped straight into the heart of it, offering me a heartfelt apology for everything that had gone wrong. She admitted that she'd been too quick to believe my mother's words, too ready to take her side without asking the questions that could have spared all of us so much heartache. She confessed that had she seen through the lies from the beginning, we could have avoided this mess altogether. And you know what? I appreciated her honesty. I saw in her eyes that this wasn't just words, it was an acknowledgement of her role in all of it, a real effort to make things right. She didn't dodge responsibility, she took it head on, and I had to respect that. The tension that had built up over weeks seemed to lift in that moment, even if just a little. It was a relief to hear her speak the truth, to know that she understood the gravity of everything that had happened. Still, I let her know that while I appreciated the apology, it would take time to process it all. Trust, after all, is a fragile thing. It doesn't come back overnight. People often ask me about my relationship with my mother. What can I say? Growing up, she was there, sure. She kept the roof over my head, made sure I had food, and did what she had to do to get by. But when it came to emotional support, well, she wasn't exactly a candidate for Mother of the Year. If I'm being honest, she was the type of mom who did just enough, not the worst, but far from the best. She was the kind of mother who checked the boxes, but I always felt there was something missing. Something vital that every child needs but doesn't always get. I didn't realize it then, though. At the time, I was too wrapped up in my own world to see the cracks. Or maybe I just didn't want to. After all, how could I admit that my mother wasn't the perfect parent I always imagined? Looking back, it's clearer now. The missed birthdays, the lack of affection, the constant feeling of being misunderstood, it was always there, like a quiet hum beneath the surface. But back then, I made excuses. I convinced myself it was normal. Maybe that's what kids do, they rationalize away their parents' flaws, because facing the truth feels like too much. So, no, there wasn't any one traumatic event. It was more like a slow, steady drip of disappointment. A realization, over time, that the woman I had hoped would love me unconditionally just couldn't measure up. But I refused to let that define me. I'm not just a product of my past. I'm stronger than that. I'm a survivor, a fighter, and my future isn't bound by the mistakes of others. A few weeks passed after that initial confrontation, and a lot happened in that time. You won't believe this, but just when I thought everything had settled down, it all came crashing back in the form of a showdown. Turns out, my mother's manipulations with A didn't just stop there. They'd formed some kind of bond, a strange connection that I never fully understood. I don't know if it was shared interests or something else, but whatever it was enough for A to take everything my mom said at face value. She believed the lies, and for years, I had to live with the consequences. But then, out of nowhere, it reached her breaking point. She had had enough of the lies, enough of the deception. She marched right up to my mom outside the church, yes, right outside the church, and let her have it. From what I heard, it was like something straight out of a drama. There was yelling, finger-pointing, the whole 9 yards. It didn't end quietly. The whole town was buzzing, and before I knew it, everyone in our circle knew about it. I almost expected my mom to be embarrassed, to feel ashamed. But no, that wasn't the case. She probably brushed it off like it was nothing. It was just another thing for her to shrug off, another confrontation she could avoid. As for A, I could tell it was a relief for her. She felt lighter, as though the weight of the lies had finally been lifted. It was a moment of clarity for her. She stood up for me, she set the record straight, and she felt good about it. I could tell she was at peace with her actions. But my mom? She didn't take it well. Not at all. She didn't text, didn't call, but I knew she was angry. I could feel the storm brewing when suddenly my phone started blowing up with angry voicemails from her. She went on and on about how I was ruining her life, how the people at her church wouldn't even look at her anymore. And still, not once did she say the words I needed to hear, an apology. Normally, I might have caved. I might have called her back, tried to smooth things over, tried to be the dutiful daughter. But not this time. I'd had enough. I wasn't going to play her games anymore. I wasn't going to get caught in her web of lies and manipulation. So, I made a decision. I was done. I was cutting her off, and this time, I wasn't looking back. It's never easy to make that decision. There's a certain pain that comes with cutting ties, especially when it's family. But at some point, you have to put your own mental health first. And that's exactly what I did. It was the hardest choice I've ever made, but it was necessary. Then came the third update. Life had its own plans, as always. Just when I thought I was done, my mom's health took a turn. She started showing signs of dementia, and suddenly, I was facing a reality I hadn't expected. Here I was, ready to sever ties completely, and yet life threw me a curveball I couldn't ignore. My mother, the woman who had hurt me for so long, was slipping away. I couldn't just walk away. She was still my mother, no matter what. It was heartbreaking. Seeing her confused, frightened, not even recognizing her own daughter, it was like a punch to the gut. The woman I once knew was fading, and I had to grapple with the fact that I might not have time to heal the wounds between us. For a while, my cousin stepped in, offering care, staying with her when she needed help. But if things get worse, we might have to make the decision to put her in a nursing home. It was a tough pill to swallow. I was caught between my pain and the need to do the right thing. It's strange, the mix of emotions I'm feeling. There's sadness, yes. But there's also a glimmer of hope. Hope that my mom will get the care she deserves, hope that she'll find peace in her final days. It's complicated, but maybe, just maybe, this will be the chapter where healing begins, for me, for her, and for all of us.